Hello everyone and welcome back to another video of Fox Reacts. Today we're checking out a new vid from Josh Sculpture, top 10 longest bosses. And for some reason, this video of his is 44 minutes, so I'm gonna have to do something kind of new. I'll be splitting this video into two parts. In this episode, we'll watch 10 through 6, and then in the next one, we'll watch 5 through 1. So, looks like you'll be seeing me double time. Let's hop in and see just which bosses are as long as this video. Actually, hold on one moment. Alright. That intro is always awesome. I'd love to get into contact with this boss and they can make an intro just like that. It would be really cool.
Boss fights, by their very nature, tend to be a bit on the longer side of things. This is justified since they're meant to be more challenging and impactful than a regular battle. Then there are these bosses, the kind where you figure out the strategy early on, but they still take forever to die. The kind where you're constantly thinking, why can't you just die? Whether it's due to inflated health and abundance of different forms.
In a case like that, I would reference more like Austin Powers.
Or few opportunities to inflict damage, these are the bosses that go on pretty much forever. The criteria is simple. The longer the boss, the higher it places. With that said, there are a lot of rules we have to lay out first. 1. Multiple phases and forms absolutely count. 2. No bosses that are fought at the end of a boss rush or a gauntlet of bosses. They have to be long on their own. 3. If the boss includes unskippable cutscenes and especially long attack animations, then that will be counted as part of the length. 4. These bosses have to be long even when using the optimal strategy. If there's a common or easily executable strategy that lets you trivialize them, then they're off the list. 5. If the game has difficulty settings or there's an unlockable stronger version of a boss, that will be a factor. 6. Genre context matters. For example, if a boss from an action game and a boss from an RPG are both 10 minutes long, action games generally tend to have shorter boss fights compared to RPG games because of pacing. 7. Secret methods of defeating a boss like Phoenix Downs on undead enemies will be disregarded since they're more like Easter eggs than anything else. 8. Glitches and exploits are also disregarded since they're not what the devs intended. And since we're talking about long bosses, I decided to go one step further and make this a top 15.
Hang in tight, folks. We're in for the long...
Okay, a top 15, not a top 10. Wow, I didn't actually expect that. So, looks like we're going to do this as a 3-parter then. And the 15 to 11, and the 10 to 6, 5 to 1.
Long one.
Let's go. Yes, nice joke, Josh. Let's move. Oh, I got an ad. Didn't even see it come up. And here we are, starting off with number 15. Let's go.
Lost Odyssey, a lost gem among the obscure JRPGs
okay, well, just great.
that run amok. A lost journey directed by the creator of Final Fantasy himself, Hironobu Sakaguchi. And lost as it is only available on Xbox when most JRPG players tend to lean more towards PlayStation and Nintendo products. Lost Odyssey indeed. Anyways, for those who haven't played or heard of this game, it's a turn-based JRPG for the Xbox 360 developed by Mistwalker. It follows Kaim and his group of fellow adventurers as they try to stop the plot of the evil sorcerer Gungaga from his ultimate plan and learn more about their past along the way. Honestly though, for this entry, you don't need to know any of that because we're not talking about the story whatsoever. We're talking about the super boss of this long game, the Immortal One. The Immortal One is a fitting name, as this guy takes absolutely forever to take down. With 175,000 HP in a game where it's hard to hit 9,999, and in a game where spellcast animations take forever, and regular attack animations require you to line up a ring to do extra damage, it'll take a while. He's immune to black magic, so you'll need to rely on physical attacks, white and spirit magic too. As for his attacks, his entire arsenal is designed to keep your resources at a minimum. His cube attack can reduce you to 1 to 2% of your health, his sneeze attack will reduce your shields, and he also has the spell Divide, which will do damage to you equal to the amount of health he has left. And did I mention he has 175,000 HP? Yeah.
Well,
you're gonna need a bigger boat.
So how do you beat him? Use Divide yourself. Make sure your HP is maxed out on 9,999 and spam Divide. Just make sure you also cast faster on yourself too, as the casting for Divide takes 2 turns and this battle is long enough. If he hits you with Cube, use Reversa, which will do damage based on how much HP you're missing. Skills like Complete Defense or Crisis Defense will assist greatly in your survivability. Don't use full heals either, or else, guess what? He'll cube ya. Gotta withstand the cube. Even at level 99, this fight can take upwards of 20 minutes to beat, and as far as I can tell, the Divide strat is the fastest way to put him down. True, he is the game's super boss, so him taking a while shouldn't be surprising, but that's why he's here. If you aren't prepped, the Immortal One will trounce you, and even your own Immortals won't be enough to save you.
That's, story reference. No spoilers. What? I'm not telling you the context, go play the game yourself.
We got another ad. Now on the number 14. Kind of surprising he didn't change this to the top
Ace
15,
Attorney Investigations is a little different from your average Phoenix Wright fare. Instead of courtroom battles, you investigate crime scenes as Miles Edgeworth and question witnesses on the spot. There's no rules in set for how long you're allowed to question someone, meaning it's possible for a single session to last a long while. Which brings us to Turnabout Ablaze, one of the longest cases in Ace Attorney history. In Edgeworth's quest to topple an international smuggling ring, he investigates the Cadopian embassy led by 2 ambassadors of the formerly United Nation. One of these ambassadors is Callias Paleno, a welcoming, slightly nervous fellow who's set on reuniting the nation back together. He seems suspicious, but he didn't really have much to hide and is really honest with his line of work. As for the other ambassador...
Smells like millennials over here. Reminds me of the time I went to Coachella.
Quirkus Alba was formerly the ambassador...
No! Don't bring Pete into this! No! Oh! For those of you that don't know, another YouTuber known as Salty DK Dan that did what was known as a friend lock. And one of his Pokemon was a Cradily that was named Pete Nis. Well, his real name is Peter Nis, but he goes by Pete. And when he actually first encountered on the team, that's what he said! That's why it's so funny.
Of Codopia, now governing only his side of the nation after it's been split. He seems like a humble old man at first, deprecating himself for how weak and old he's gotten, and fairly strict over the safety of his territory. But of course, we just ruled out Paleno from the suspects list, so I think you all know where this is going. Yep, this guy's the big bad we've been looking for. As it appears, Alba has been controlling the smuggling scene from the back, all the while personally eliminating the people who plan to usurp him, including Damask II, who tried to steal the counterfeit he kept in his office, and Manny Cochin, his secretary and fellow smuggler whom he fought near the Embassy Theater. The former's murder he even confessed to willingly, claiming it was self-defense. However, even with evidence pointing to him as a first-degree murderer and a smuggling ringleader, taking him down is no easy task. Why? Extraterritorial rights.
I've got diplomatic immunity, so Hammer, you can't sue.
Tree Man will worm his way out of any argument simply because the crimes are his country's business, not the local courts. And as an ambassador, he has the right to say no whenever he pleases. Even if you clarify that the crime is outside of the foreign soil, he won't let up. Coming up with some of the most absurd counterproofs and getting away with it.
Just because you're a diplomat, you can park anywhere you want?
Most big bads in the series usually take at most 2 episodes per case to go down. Interrogating this guy takes up 3 episodes. So as you can tell, it takes a lot of work to put him out of commission, especially since every argument can be summed up as such. This evidence proves that you were in the dressing room killing the victim with a weapon that has your prints on it. Witnesses even claimed you went to the dressing room at the exact time the victim died.
Nice deduction. But you see, I went to the room to brush my teeth with a mezwak. But the room the victim died in only has regular toothbrushes. So I'm sorry, but it's not the same room.
That's Lily.
That was a point. As ridiculous as this verbal clash may be, it does put into perspective the legal principles surrounding beyond a shadow of a doubt. Prosecutors are entitled to their duty to prove that the accused is guilty without a stone left to be turned. With how our legal system is set up, we would pretty much rather let 100 criminals go free than send an innocent man to prison. Ace Attorney has a habit of putting the accuser in a holy shade, but this is an instance where we get to see what prosecutors are really meant to deal with. Makes you appreciate Wright's company all the more, don't you, Miles?
You did good work, Edward. You did good work. Number 13.
I liked the Pokemon GameCube games before Chugga Conroy made it cool.
Oh, we're talking about
You notice that the Pokemon GameCube games tend to be harder than the main series? I guess because they were going for a more mature audience with them.
Hold on. It's gotta load. It does this. It will randomly freeze on a scene, then actually start loading. And it won't just stop, load, and then continue playing.
Coliseum was fuming in places in terms of difficulty. XD had a more balanced pacing to it. At least, for the most part. Because no matter how much love I or others have for the Pokemon GameCube games, and XD in particular, can disguise the fact that XD's final boss is sheer BS. Greevil is the current leader of Cypher, and the one pulling the good guy with squinty eyes persona, but actually, it was me, Evil Eyes McGee, with all my evil! Good gracious, that trope was dumb.
So I guess that's why he always had his eyes closed. Those evil eyes. That's just kind of a stretch. Hey, let's take a small break and let all this load. Alright, this will be long enough.
Dumb, but not as dumb as this fight. First off, you need to take on the Shadow Lugia that Greevil's been controlling all game. You might as well use your Master Ball on this guy because you will need the stamina and patience to handle Greevil's actual team. Remember how everyone in Coliseum only had one Shadow Pokemon on their teams? And remember how XD said, screw that, we're gonna have multiple? Well, Greevil's entire team is just Shadow Pokemon. And these aren't easy to catch Pokemon either. Zapdos, Articuno, Moltres, Rhydon, Tauros, and Executor. 3 legendaries and 3 rare Pokemon makes this fight stupid hard. And of course, since this is XD, you need to catch all 6 Pokemon to fully win, which will take a while. Now the chucklers in the back are screaming out with a bit of an echo, well, you can just feint all of them. That won't take that long. And that's true. But we're looking at the correct way to fight these bosses. And in Greevil's case, it's to catch all of his Pokemon. Sure, you can catch some of them and feint the rest so you can come back later, but that's technically still fighting him as a boss, and therefore increasing the time that you're fighting him. And even if you go for the feint strat, Greevil's Shadow Pokemon hit hard and have annoying attacks like Shadow Storm, Shadow Sky, Shadow Down, and each of the birds have their own unique Shadow moves that do a bunch of damage to you. So good luck surviving if you can. Oh yeah, and this fight is at the end of one of the longest and hardest final dungeons in Pokemon history with Sida Dark Isle, where the difficulty ramps up and tests you in ways that none of the other Pokemon games have and since. With a few exceptions. Sure, Greevil has alternate strats to beat him, and honestly, you could get lucky with catching his Pokemon to make the overall fight much shorter. But when playing normally, you can't sit there and tell me that this battle doesn't take an absolute eternity when doing it correctly. Plus, if you aren't catching all of the Pokemon in the game, what kind of trainer are you?
You know, I'm starting to see why they call this Pokemon XD. It's like they're laughing at us.
Oh, yeah, the laughing face. I get it now. I get it. Oh, well. Number 12.
This next boss is the one that made me realize that we needed an action game distinction for the list.
Bayonetta, the action game with the protagonist who uses hair as a weapon, and no other characteristics I can think of. It isn't that surprising to see a Bayonetta boss on these lists. Honestly, it's more surprising that you don't see these bosses here more often. Well, let's get to it, because you guys know that we're talking about Jubileus, and this boss has a lot to it. That's why it's here, after all. So you put young Cereza to bed after beating Daddy Baldur into the ground, and the credits start to roll. Unfortunately, this game was made by Platinum Games, so the credits are halted in the middle, and Bayo is grabbed by the game's main villain, Jubileus, in a hope to steal her abilities. Jean, finally free from mind control, drives up the side of a rocket heading to space to save her. So this section takes forever in itself, as you need to defeat a bunch of enemies with John to reach Jubileus and free Bayonetta. Eventually, you reach the head of the statue and free her and start the actual crutch of the battle. The core fight itself has 5 phases to it that you need to work through. If you see my final bosses countdown, you know the gist of this fight. Jubileus will attack with her hair, and you need to destroy the different parts of it to break down their HP. Throughout the fight, she will change the arena around with different elemental factors to make it more difficult to reach her, starting with fire, then ice, then wind, and ending with, well, not really a new element, but she starts going full force. The final phase of hers is the most difficult, as her hair pieces can shock you now, and she can summon insta-kill portals to make you start this long fight all over again. Finally, you reach the climax to summon the Queen of Inferno and launch Jubileus into the sun, finishing her off once and for all. Finally, the credits roll again, showing your triumphant victory, and yeah, nope, she's still not dead. Her spirit merged with the sun, and she's gonna collide with the earth unless you kill her in the next minute or so. So you do, and then the game's over. Seriously this time, no take-backs, nothing. She's done and gone. Baldurism, but that's for Bayonetta 2, and maybe 3, but that isn't out yet. The fight against Jubileus can take up to 20 minutes depending on your skill level and difficulty. For an action game, that's insane, as these fights tend to not last as long. Like, really look at a lot of boss battle lengths in games like Kingdom Hearts or God of War. They feel like they take longer, but they actually don't. Honestly, the longest and most cinematic part is the rocket ride with John, and that does count technically since it's on the same mission. But I digress. Jubileus is lower because with enough skill, you can easily beat the main fight much quicker than most bosses, and cutscenes do play a large factor. At least the fight is super fun too, which makes the effort way more satisfying.
Another ad. Here we go. This should be number 11.
As a spiritual successor for the Left 4 Dead series, Back 4 Blood throws its hat into the undead pandemic ring by having the game set in a post-apocalyptic world where a parasite turns humanity into mutants known as the Ridden. Only a small group of survivors, the Cleaners, stand between the Ridden and their home in Fort Hope. Unfortunately for the Cleaners, the game's final act comes with one last big obstacle.
It's Godzilla!
Oh boy, now we're gonna need a bigger boat. Meet the appropriately named Abomination, an enormous titan of a Ridden aiming to crush Fort Hope in its unsavory rampage. To wrap the game up and save your homestead, you're gonna have to pursue this mutated beauty in 3 stages, as well as take out any Ridden that comes your way. No pressure or anything! In Phase 1, you have to take out its 4 tentacles that spring out of the ground, and each tentacle destroyed brings out more grunts to slow you down. Phase 2 has you dodging acid attacks while trying to take out the weak spots in the Abomination's mouth, while still dodging Ridden attacks. Feeling overwhelmed yet? Oh, just wait. In the final phase, you have to chase it down, take out the 4 weak spots all over its body, and, say it with me now, still avoiding Ridden grunts, all within 5 minutes, or else our grisly Leviathan will reach Fort Hope, and the last of humanity is pretty much doomed.
C for effort?
In concept, it seems like a pretty straightforward fight. Look for the weak spots, use the right tools, I recommend grenades for the tentacles and the mouse stages, and keep on the Leviathan's trail. But the stages gradually grow in difficulty and force you to juggle your main targets, and all the annoying Ridden running around to take a bite out of you. So yeah, you're in for a hard, long run. Not surprised considering how broken the game actually is. Seriously, if this is the game on easy, I don't want to know what hard is like.
Yeah, that would be something. Now, before we continue on, that's, well, as I said, we're going to end this off. 3 portals, 5 in each. So, the next time you see me, we'll continue on with number 10.